Welcome to the Life Enrichment podcast, a reflection space based on the writings, ideas, and philosophies of Jose H. Caraballo, LCSW. Content note: this episode may include themes related to childhood trauma, emotional pain, family conflict, or difficult life experiences. Please listen with care and pause if you need to.
Thank you. It's really good to be here today.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're here because today we're doing a deep dive into some of Jose's most personal journal reflections. And our real mission today is to explore how this one sudden, completely unexplained moment of emotional overwhelm actually became the foundation for, a life of profound clarity and purpose.
Right? It's such a fascinating transformation.
It really is. So I want you, the listener, to picture this. It's the summer of 2013. You're driving down the street on your way to lunch. It's just a completely ordinary weekday.
Yeah, nothing special happening at all.
Right. There was no impending crisis, no dramatic phone call, no sudden trauma. I mean, the engine of your life sounds perfectly fine. But suddenly, out of nowhere, the dashboard warning light in your brain just starts flashing bright red.
Wow. Just totally out of the blue.
Completely. A wave of this uncontrollable, intense emotional overwhelm hits you so hard that you actually find yourself crying in your car, completely blindsided and just unable to drive.
I mean, it's a terrifying scenario because it completely defies our logical understanding of, cause and effect.
Right, because there's no cause.
Exactly. We're conditioned to view emotional breakdowns as these direct reactions to immediate, visible catastrophes. So like a relationship ends, a job is lost, maybe a loved one passes away, and the alarm goes off.
Which makes sense. The human mind can process that linear equation.
Yes, exactly. But in Jose's journal reflections, the ones we're looking at in this deep dive, the external environment was entirely stable. The crisis was completely invisible.
Okay, let's push on that disconnect for a second. Because if the external environment is stable, why does the alarm trigger while you're simply, driving to lunch?
It's a great question.
I mean, if the subconscious knows there's a problem, why does it wait for such a mundane moment to pull the emergency brake? It just seems like a massive delay in the system.
Well, it's actually less of a delay and more of a strategic intervention by the nervous system.
Wait, strategic? How so?
So when we are actively engaged in navigating our daily lives, answering emails, attending meetings, fulfilling social obligations, our conscious mind is just heavily occupied.
Right, we're busy.
Yeah, we are essentially overriding our internal state with external demands. But the moment we experience a lull in that cognitive load, like say an autopilot drive to grab lunch, our psychological defenses just lower.
Oh, wow. So the distraction fades.
Exactly, the distraction fades. And the massive backlog of suppressed internal truth, which has been building pressure for months or even years, finally has the space to flood the system.
It honestly reminds me of checking the task manager on a computer. Have you ever done that?
Oh yeah, where everything is frozen.
Right. You're looking at your screen, and you only have one simple document open, but the cooling fan is just screaming and the CPU is running at 99% capacity.
Right.
And you think, well, the computer's broken. But when you look closer, there are 20 massive, heavy applications running silently in the background, entirely draining the system's resources.
That is such a highly accurate way to frame the mechanics of suppression.
Yeah, because it feels like you aren't exhausted because of the simple life you're currently looking at. You're exhausted because your psychological battery is being drained by the invisible effort required to suppress your actual truth.
Yes. So the breakdown Jose experienced in his car wasn't a malfunction of his emotional regulation at all. It was actually a highly successful, healthy intervention by his nervous system.
Because it forced him to stop.
Exactly. His internal guidance system was violently asserting itself to shut down those background processes that were draining him. It was a physical override of a cognitive illusion.
And because his body forcefully overrode his logic like that, he couldn't just brush it off as, a bad mood.
No, he really couldn't.
So reading from his reflections, he eventually manages to drive himself home and he decides to take a shower. And usually we use things like a hot shower to literally and metaphorically wash off a bad day.
Yeah.
Like to reset the nervous system.
Right, it's a common coping mechanism.
But stepping into the shower actually amplified the crisis for him. He breaks down again. But this time, he stops fighting the physical response. He just lets the emotional wave crash over him.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
It is. And in that sensory deprivation where it's just him and the water, he confronts this deeply uncomfortable realization. His life wasn't falling apart externally. He was healthy. He had family. He had friends. He was starting a promising new career.
Yeah, the profound friction of that moment is what we can call the paradox of the unhappy breakdown.
The unhappy breakdown. I like that
The
phrase.
pain wasn't coming from failure, right? The pain was coming from the realization that his success just felt hollow. He was forced to confront the fact that his life was simply not unfolding the way it was internally meant to, despite looking totally perfect on paper.
Okay, so let's push back on this paradox a bit, because it defies literally all of our societal conditioning.
Oh, absolutely it does.
I mean, we are sold a very specific, rigid formula for happiness from a very young age. We're taught that if you secure a good career path, maintain your physical health, and build a solid social circle, you will reach a state of contentment.
It's basically framed as a mathematical certainty.
Exactly. So for the average person listening, how do we reconcile doing everything right according to the societal blueprint, but feeling completely wrong on a biological, internal level?
Well, the flaw lies in the blueprint itself. That societal checklist is designed for a generic human. It prioritizes stability, predictability, and external validation. But we aren't generic humans. We are highly specific individuals with unique core values. So when we spend our energy trying to meticulously tick the boxes of a generic blueprint, we often build a life that is fundamentally misaligned with our authentic self.
Which creates that friction.
Exactly. The psychological term for this is building a false self. It's basically an adaptive survival mechanism we create to meet the expectations of our families, our culture, or our peers.
So checking the boxes isn't inherently bad. But if those boxes require you to continuously perform a version of yourself that isn't real, the cost of that performance eventually bankrupts your nervous system.
Precisely. The pain Jose felt in that shower was the acute friction of the false self literally tearing away.
Ouch.
Yeah. He recognized that checking the boxes does not generate authenticity. When your daily actions, your career trajectory, and your interpersonal dynamics are out of alignment with who you are actually becoming, your body registers that misalignment as a threat.
So the breakdown is your true self just refusing to perform anymore.
It is. It's a demand for a complete pivot.
And that structural pivot leads to one of the most counterintuitive details in his entire reflection.
The sleep part.
Yes, the sleep paradox.
Well,
So the immediate aftermath of this profound identity-shattering realization in the shower wasn't what you would expect.
Okay.
Usually, an existential crisis of this magnitude, realizing your entire life path needs to be restructured, is a recipe for severe anxiety.
Oh, yeah. It triggers the classic 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling insomnia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Jose writes that after the shower, he went to bed and experienced one of the deepest, most restful sleeps of his entire life.
That detail is just incredibly revealing about the neurobiology of surrender.
Unpack that for us, because it sounds crazy. Why would acknowledging a painful truth result in such deep rest?
Well, we often assume that facing a massive, painful truth is what causes psychological distress. But the truth itself is actually neutral.
Neutral.
Yeah. The distress, the anxiety, the sleeplessness, those are symptoms of cognitive dissonance. They are the physiological byproducts of the active, ongoing war between what you know deep down and what you are pretending to be.
Oh, I see. So the tension doesn't come from the truth. The tension comes from the exhaustion of holding the door shut to keep the truth out.
Yes. Beautifully said. When Jose was in the shower and finally stopped fighting the emotional overwhelm, he stopped holding the door shut.
He just let it in.
Right. From a biological perspective, maintaining a false self keeps the body trapped in the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight state. Your body perceives the dissonance as a continuous, low-level threat.
Like a tiger is always in the room.
Exactly. But the moment he surrendered and accepted the reality of his misalignment, the internal civil war ended. The cognitive dissonance dissolved.
So even though his future was suddenly completely unknown and potentially terrifying, the immediate physiological threat was just gone.
Exactly. The resolution of that internal conflict signals the brain that the immediate danger has passed, allowing the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest state, to take over.
Wow.
He didn't have a single answer about what his new career would look like or how his relationships would shift, but he had stopped fighting his internal compass.
And the profound relief of that surrender is what allowed his nervous system to drop into such a restorative deep sleep.
Yeah. When he woke up, the overwhelming panic had been replaced by an intense, sustainable peace.
The physiological relief of that sleep, it fundamentally shifts how we understand his next steps. Because his nervous system was finally out of survival mode, he could actually begin the cognitive work of reflection.
Right, he had the bandwidth again.
Yes. And if we're utilizing this deep dive as a roadmap for understanding transformation, it is so vital to recognize that the Great Sleech was not the finish line.
Oh, no, not at all.
He didn't wake up the next morning with a magically perfect life. The breakdown was just the catalyst.
It's the clearing of the ground. The actual rebuilding took years.
Years.
Yeah. Jose entered a prolonged period of deep, intentional reflection. He utilized writing and journaling not just as a diary of his days, but as an investigative tool to dissect the major themes of his life.
Like what kind of themes?
He examined the mechanics of his emotions, the subtle compromises in his behaviors, the underlying structures of his relationships, his communication patterns, and his career motivations.
Let's dissect the mechanism of that journaling process, because there is a massive difference between healthy reflection and toxic rumination.
A huge difference.
Because ruminating is just spinning your wheels in the emotional center of the brain, the amygdala, right?
Yeah.
You're reliving past pain without generating any new insight.
Right. You're just trapped in the feeling.
But journaling, when done correctly, forces the brain to translate raw, nebulous emotion into linear language. It engages the prefrontal cortex. It moves the experience out of the panic center and into the logic and planning center.
That neurological shift is what makes structured reflection so potent. In his journals, Jose made a crucial distinction. When he revisited his past trauma, his failed relationships, or his unhealthy patterns, he didn't do it to self-flagellate.
He wasn't beating himself up.
No, he wasn't mining his history to justify staying stuck in a victim mentality or to throw a pity party. He analyzed those experiences purely to extract the data.
To extract the data.
Yeah. He wanted to understand what the friction was trying to teach him about his own necessary growth.
It is the exact process of an architect auditing the foundation of a building.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right? Yeah. Like when an architect conducts a structural audit and finds a massive crack in the concrete, their emotional response isn't despair. They don't sit in the basement crying over the fact that the crack exists or cursing the original builders.
Right, that wouldn't fix anything.
They examine the crack objectively, they measure its depth, they test the load-bearing capacity of the walls around it, they figure out if a beam was carrying weight it wasn't designed to carry.
That's perfect.
They analyze the failure, so they know exactly what the soil conditions are and exactly what new mixture of concrete is required to ensure the structure never fractures there again.
The objectivity in that analogy is the absolute key to Jose's methodology. He was conducting a structural audit of his own psyche.
Wow.
When he looked at a past relationship that drained him, he was looking at a load-bearing failure. He asked himself, what were the dynamics here? Why did I tolerate this? What boundary was missing?
He wasn't labeling himself as broken.
No, not at all. He was identifying where his foundation was incompatible with the life he was trying to build.
And by systematically identifying what worked against his growth, he was also clarifying what actually supported it. You can't know what kind of concrete to pour until you understand the environmental conditions.
Exactly.
Through this slow, deliberate auditing process, the blueprint for his actual, authentic life began to emerge.
And that blueprint requires severe honesty. You have to be willing to look at a career you spent a decade building and admit that it is structurally unsound for your current self.
That is terrifying.
It is. You have to be willing to look at long-term relationships and recognize toxic patterns without flinching. Because Jose sustained this level of objective reflection over several years, he was able to distill his findings into a tangible framework.
Which brings us to the real-world application of this entire journey. The multi-year structural audit resulted in Jose forming his own rules for living an enriched life.
Yes.
He didn't just keep these insights in a notebook. He altered his daily operations. He changed how he made decisions, how he communicated his boundaries, and how he engaged with his work.
It became practical.
Highly practical.
Okay.
And this internal alignment eventually manifested externally with the creation of the Center for Life Enrichment, which is an organization built explicitly on the pillars of love, inspire, and heal.
The trajectory there is just remarkable. He transitioned from being paralyzed by an invisible internal conflict in his car to establishing a center designed to help others navigate their own misalignments.
Right.
By utilizing his own breakdown as raw material for growth, he created a framework to facilitate connection and healing for the community.
And as he documents the aftermath of this transformation, he notes a fundamental shift in his daily baseline. He developed a heightened awareness of beauty, a profound connection to his daily work, and just a natural posture of gratitude.
Which is beautiful.
But the most vital synthesis of his journey is how he redefined the very concept of a meaningful life. It completely subverts the societal formula we discussed earlier.
It really does. His redefined framework for meaning is the ultimate antithesis of the generic societal checklist. We are conditioned to believe that meaning is an accumulative process.
Like gathering points.
Exactly. We think it's found in acquiring status, stockpiling achievements, curating an impressive image for others, and just flawlessly executing the expectations handed down by our families or our culture.
We treat meaning like a high score we're trying to achieve on a test written by someone else.
Yes, exactly, which guarantees the dashboard warning light will eventually go off because the test itself is irrelevant to your biology. Jose realized that a truly meaningful life requires abandoning the accumulative mindset entirely. Meaning is not found in performance, it's found in resonance.
Resonance.
Yes, it's about moving through your day in a manner that is deeply congruent with the person you are actually becoming.
That makes a lot of sense.
It requires a continuous active movement away from environments, habits, and relationships that force you to shrink or perform a false self, and a deliberate movement toward spaces that demand your authenticity and facilitate your growth.
It's the shift from living from the outside and letting the world dictate your structure to living from the inside out, letting your internal values dictate your external choices.
Right.
That is the core utility of Jose's story. He shared these intensely personal reflections not just as a memoir, but as a proof of concept.
Absolutely.
He documented the mechanics of his breakdown and his recovery to demonstrate that radical realignment is entirely possible, no matter how entrenched you are in the wrong path.
And the practical application for anyone listening to this deep dive right now is that you do not have to wait for the biological emergency brake to trigger.
You don't have to break down in your car.
Right. You do not need to wait until you are crying in your car to initiate a structural audit of your life. The warning signs are usually present long before the breakdown occurs.
What do those look like?
They show up as chronic fatigue, low-level irritability, a sense of dread on Sunday evenings, or just the feeling that you are playing a character in your own life.
So how do we start the audit today before the dashboard light turns red?
You adopt the posture of the architect, you take a piece of paper, you engage the prefrontal cortex, and you begin a gentle but fiercely honest journaling practice.
Why?
You evaluate the major load-bearing structures of your life, your habits, your social circles, your professional obligations, your internal narratives.
And what are you asking yourself?
You ask yourself objective questions. Which of these current patterns are actually supporting my growth? And which ones are quietly, invisibly working against it?
That's powerful.
It doesn't require you to quit your job or end a relationship tomorrow. The first step is simply observation without judgment. You are just measuring the cracks.
Observation without judgment. Once you see the blueprint clearly, the necessary adjustments will naturally reveal themselves over time.
Exactly.
As we wrap up this exploration of Jose's writings, I want to leave you, the listener, with a direct, provocative question. This is a common note to actively process as you move through the rest of your day, inspired by the mechanics of the journey we just analyzed. If you stripped away all of the external expectations currently placed upon you, if you removed your professional titles, the pressure to maintain a certain physical appearance, the desire to impress your peers, and the legacy demands of your family are the choices you made today actually aligned with the person you are becoming?
That is the ultimate question.
For more reflections, resources, and tools, visit the Center for Life Enrichment at centerforlifeenrichment.com.
This podcast is for education and reflection only. It is not therapy, medical advice, or a substitute for professional care. If you are in crisis or immediate danger, contact emergency services or call or text 988 in the United States.